I used to believe that love grew where it belonged, that it lived in families, in bloodlines, in the places where laughter and memories were planted like gardens. But life, as it turns out, is stranger and softer than that. Sometimes love grows in the places where it was never expected. Sometimes it shows up in rooms full of grief, in hearts that don't know how to ask for help, in voices that have forgotten how to speak. My name is Elena, and this is the story of how I became a mother in a house that did not want me, and how love rebuilt a family that had been shattered beyond recognition. I was 24 when I started working for the Sterling family. Everyone in the city knew them. Their name was on skyscrapers, foundations, art museums, the kind of wealth that didn't just buy comfort, it shaped history. People didn't say their name lightly. They said it like a headline, the Sterlings. But for all that power, all that influence, all that glittering public perfection, their house was quiet when I first arrived.
Too quiet.
The kind of quiet that comes from absence, not peace. I remember standing at the bottom of their long driveway, staring up at the mansion that sat like a glass palace overlooking the city. Tall windows, long terraces, trimmed hedges, stone fountains ringing with water. Beautiful. But beauty can be lonely too. I had been hired as a live-in caretaker and maid. The posting had been vague but urgent. The pay was more than anything I had ever imagined earning. Enough to support my parents back home. Enough to change my life entirely. But money does not explain grief. And I didn't know what I was walking into. Not yet. The door was opened by a man I would later learn was the family butler, Mr. Hawthorne. He was stiff in posture, but not unkind. Just tired. He didn't shake my hand. He didn't introduce himself. He simply said, "They're upstairs. Follow me." No explanation. We walked through hallways that looked like museum corridors, oil paintings of ancestors, marble floors, long echoes of footsteps. But there was no laughter, no movement, no music, only silence. We climbed the wide staircase. He paused outside a door. White, polished gold doorknob, no markings. He knocked softly once, then opened it. Inside were two little girls, twin girls, no older than 6. They sat together on a window seat, knees tucked close, identical blonde hair falling like curtains around their small faces. One held a stuffed rabbit with matted fur. The other clutched her sister's arm like it was the last anchor she had. Their eyes turned toward me, and I felt it, not curiosity.
Fear.
Deep, quiet fear. Mr. Hawthorne spoke gently. "Girls, this is Elena. She'll be staying with us now." Neither child spoke. He cleared his throat and left the room. The door clicked shut, and I was alone with them. The air felt fragile. I knelt slowly, not too close, not too far. "My name is Elena," I repeated softly. "I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm just here to help." Still nothing. They looked at me like I was a ghost. Or maybe they were the ghosts. Their silence wasn't rudeness. It was grief. I recognized it, because I had seen it in the mirror once, years ago, when I had lost someone too. I tried again, gently. "What are your names?" The smaller twin, the one with the rabbit, spoke first. Her voice was thin, like paper wet with tears. "I'm Lily." The other took longer. Finally, she whispered. "And I'm Rose." Lily and Rose Sterling. I would later learn the city knew their names too. Not because they were heirs to a billionaire legacy, but because of what had happened 3 months before. Their mother had died.
Sudden.
Unexpected. Violent. Tragic. A car accident on a rainy night, coming home from a charity gala. Their father, Benjamin Sterling, had been driving. The newspapers covered the story like vultures. Headlines. Speculations. Rumors. He survived. She didn't. The city mourned. The society pages gossiped. Strangers grieved a woman they never knew. But the twins lost their whole world. And their father? He disappeared into his work. Into silence. Into a grief so deep that he no longer knew how to look his own daughters in the eyes. They had been alone in that house for 3 months. Night after night. Dinner after dinner. Tears after tears. And the world moved on without them. But love, real love, does not vanish when the world forgets. Love waits. It waits for hands gentle enough to hold it again. I didn't know it then. But love had been waiting for me to walk into that room. Not because I was special, but because I was willing to stay. That first night, I didn't try to talk anymore. I simply sat beside them. Close enough to be near. Far enough to not overwhelm. We watched the sun dip below the city skyline through the tall glass windows. Lily rested her head on her sister's shoulder. Rose rested her head on the glass. And I simply sat there. In silence. Not forcing anything. Not hurrying anything. Grief moves on its own schedule. And then, just before bedtime, Lily whispered something. So quiet I almost didn't hear. She said, "Do you know how to braid hair?" My voice broke a little when I answered.
Yes.
Yes, I do. She nodded. A small nod. Barely movement. But it was the first door that opened. So I braided Lily's hair. And then Rose's. Small braids. Simple.
Soft.
And when I finished, Rose looked at her reflection and whispered, "Mom used to do that." Her voice cracked on the word mom. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. I just placed my hand over hers. No words. Just presence. And that was when Rose leaned against me.
Gently.
But fully. The way a child does when they decide to trust you. And Lily followed, laying her head in my lap. I held them both. And for the first time in months, they slept without crying. I didn't know then how deeply they would come to love me. Or how deeply I would come to love them. I didn't know that I would stay longer than I was paid to stay. I didn't know that I would become the one who would teach them to laugh again. I didn't know that I would become the one they called for after nightmares. I didn't know that I would become the one who showed their father how to love them again. I didn't know that love was about to change all of us. I only knew one thing. I wasn't going anywhere. And neither were they. I didn't meet their father until my third day in the house. In the beginning, it was just us, me, the twins, the quiet hallways, the echo of footsteps on cold marble, the soft creak of doors in a house too large for 3 people who did not yet know how to breathe together. But his presence was everywhere. His suits in the closets. His cufflinks on the dresser. His scent in the hallways, cedar, winter, something expensive. His portrait in the dining room, smiling, confident, untouchable. Benjamin Sterling was a man the world admired. Men wanted to be him. Women wanted to be seen by him. The city bowed to his influence. Newspapers praised his intellect. Magazines followed his movements. But magazines don't write about how grief rots a man from the inside. How silence can become armor. How loneliness can become law. How guilt can build a cage. The girls didn't say much about him. Not because they didn't love him, but because they didn't know how to reach him anymore. Grief had stolen him too. But unlike theirs, his grief did not cry. It hid. It was late afternoon when I first saw him. I was in the kitchen, slicing strawberries for the twin snack. The room was warm, golden light pouring through the windows. Lily and Rose sat at the island drawing quietly, small crayons making soft scratches on paper. And then the butler, Mr. Hawthorne, cleared his throat from the doorway. We turned. And there he was. Benjamin Sterling.
Tall.
Sharp-jawed. Handsome in that distant, intimidating way the wealthy often are. A charcoal suit tailored so perfectly it looked sculpted onto him. Eyes dark and unreadable. The girls froze. Like prey. Not children. And that told me everything. His gaze flicked to them, brief, almost accidental, before landing on me. "You're the new caretaker," he said. Not a question. I nodded. "Yes, sir. I'm Elena." He didn't shake my hand. He didn't smile. He only nodded once, dismissive. Then he turned to the twins. They straightened, instantly. He said their names like he was reciting passwords. Lily. Rose. They didn't answer. He didn't try again. He looked tired. Not physically. Spiritually. A man drowning in the deep end of his own silence. He walked to the coffee machine, poured himself a cup, and left without another word.
The door closed.
And Lily released a breath so shaky it broke me. Rose pulled her knees to her chest. Neither cried. This was normal for them. That was the part that hurt. Not that he was distant, that they had gotten used to it. That night, as I tucked them into bed, Lily whispered, "Daddy doesn't look at us anymore." And Rose whispered back, "He thinks we remind him of her." Their mother. The woman the world adored. The woman who had filled this house with light. And now the house was starving. I stroked their hair. "You remind him of love," I said softly. "And love hurts right now. But that doesn't mean he doesn't want you. He just doesn't know how to come back yet." Their lashes fluttered.
They didn't believe me, but they wanted to.
And sometimes one is enough to keep a heart alive. Over the next few weeks, we built a rhythm. Morning braids, storybooks, walks in the garden, small laughter, hesitant but growing. They began drawing again. They began humming little tunes again. They began sleeping without waking up in tears. Healing is never dramatic. It is slow. It is gentle. It is quiet work done in rooms where no one is watching. And love, real love, grows like moss.
Soft.
Slow. Persistent. But grief was still in the house. I felt it every time their father walked in. He became a ghost moving through hallways. He left early, returned late. He walked past them like they were memories instead of daughters. And I felt something inside me tighten each time. Protectiveness.
Not romantic.
Not dramatic. Just human. Children should be seen. Heard. Held. Not avoided like shadows. The turning point happened on a Thursday night. A storm was rolling in. Thunder, wind, rain tapping against the windows. The girls had trouble falling asleep. Storms frightened them now. They clung to me in their shared bed, little fingers tangled in the fabric of my shirt. I stroked their hair, whispered soft stories, and eventually, they drifted off. I stayed a moment longer to be sure. As I stepped out, the hallway was dim. And that's when I saw him, Benjamin, standing in the shadows at the end of the hall, staring at their door. His expression was not cold, not distant, but devastated. Like a man watching a memory he couldn't touch. He didn't notice me at first. When he did, he straightened, spine rigid, face shuddered. He tried to walk past me. But something in me, something fierce, fiery, maternal, refused to let him disappear again. So I spoke.
Softly.
"You don't have to be afraid to go in."
He stopped.
Didn't turn. Just stood there.
Still.
Like a statue carved out of grief. I stepped closer. Not enough to crowd him, just enough to let him know I wasn't scared of him. "They're awake half the night waiting to hear your footsteps," I murmured. "They miss you." Something flickered in him. Something raw. Something cracking. Something almost human again. He exhaled. Not loud, but like he had been holding that breath for months. Then he said, voice low, almost broken, "I don't know how to look at them without seeing her." My heart didn't break for him. It broke with him. Because grief was not cruel. Grief was love with nowhere to go. I didn't touch him. I didn't comfort him. I simply said, "Then learn."
Slowly. Badly.
Imperfectly. "Just don't stay gone."
He didn't respond.
Not with words. But he walked to their door. Opened it. Stepped inside. And I stood in the hallway listening. The storm outside rumbling. The silence inside shifting. And then, a sound I will never forget. Rose whispered,
"Daddy."
A pause. A sharp inhale. Then, his voice, soft, trembling. "Yes, baby." The dam broke. Their small bodies pressed into him. His arms wrapped around them. 3 hearts learning to exist together again. And I placed my hand over my mouth to keep from crying out loud. Because love had just walked back into that room. Not perfectly. Not fully. But finally. But love doesn't return without resistance. And not everyone in that house wanted me there. Not everyone believed I belonged. Not everyone understood what was growing. Or how deeply the twins had already chosen me. And the first challenge to that love came from someone with enough power to tear everything apart. I used to think grief was the hardest force to face. But I was wrong. Grief wounds, but power destroys. And in a house like the Sterlings, grief wasn't the only thing running silent through the halls. Control lived there too. And it had a name. Margaret Sterling, the twins' grandmother, Benjamin's mother. A woman who moved through the world like it owed her obedience. A woman who believed love was something that should always look polished. A woman who believed children should be taught to stand up straight, speak softly, and never, ever need. And a woman who believed that a maid hired weeks ago had already overstepped. She arrived on a Friday morning. The house was already awake. The twins were finishing breakfast, oatmeal with strawberries, and I was tying ribbons into their braids. They were giggling again these days, tiny giggles, but real. Then the front doors swung open. Not opened.
Swung.
The kind of entrance made by someone who never had to knock a day in her life. I heard her heels first.
Sharp. Precise.
A metronome of judgment against marble floors. Lily's laughter stopped mid-breath. Rose froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. They didn't need to see who it was. They recognized the sound. Fear doesn't require sight. I turned as she entered the dining room. She was elegant.
Tall.
Silver hair swept into a perfect chignon. Diamond earrings that could have paid off every debt I had ever known. A black coat fitted perfectly around her frame. She didn't look old. She looked eternal. Like marble carved into a woman. She didn't greet the girls. She greeted the room. This house looks... Her gaze swept the space. Changed. She turned her eyes to me. Not curious. Assessing.
Ah.
You must be the girl.
Girl.
Not woman. Not caretaker.
Girl.
I stood and nodded politely.
Yes.
I'm Elena. She stared at me without blinking. Not disapproval. Not surprise. Evaluation. The way someone examines a piece of jewelry to see if it's real or imitation. Then she looked at the twins. And her voice sharpened, subtly, like a silk ribbon hiding a blade. Lily.
Rose.
Come give grandmother a hug. They didn't move. Not because they were defiant. Because they didn't want to. But children know when to obey fear. So after a moment, Lily slid off her chair. Rose followed. Their steps were too small. They hugged her, stiffly. She didn't bend down to meet them. They reached up to her. She patted their heads once, as if touching delicate objects. Then she said, "You girls look better." Her tone implied they had looked wrong before. I felt something inside me tighten. She turned to me again. "And what exactly have you been doing here?" I answered carefully. "Taking care of them. Making sure they feel safe." She raised an eyebrow. Safe. The word sounded foreign to her. Like an indulgence. She looked past me, around the room, as if searching for Benjamin. "Where's their father?" "At the company. He'll be home later," I said. She hummed. Disapproval disguised as grace. Then she touched Lily's chin. Too firm. And said, "Go upstairs and change. Visitors will be here this evening. You need to look presentable." Presentable. As if their existence needed polishing. Rose clung to me. Lily hesitated. Margaret saw it. Her eyes narrowed barely, but I caught it. She had studied me and found the weak point. The twins trusted me, not her. And that was a threat. She smiled, elegant, cold, and said softly, "We'll be spending a lot of time together. You and I. I need to make sure you understand your place here." The air in the room changed. Like pressure tightening before a storm. I didn't respond. Silence is sometimes its own defense. That evening, she returned. Not with family. With lawyers. 3 of them. They sat in the study with Benjamin, voices low but sharp. I didn't listen at first. But the twins heard muffled arguing and began to tremble. So I stayed with them in the hallway, arms wrapped around both girls, holding them while voices rose and fell behind the door. Finally, it went quiet. The door opened. Benjamin stepped out. His eyes were red. Not from crying. From exhaustion. Margaret followed, composed. As if she had not just tried to rip something apart. She looked at the twins and smiled with her mouth but not her eyes. Then she looked at me and said, Your employment is terminated. You leave tomorrow. The twins gasped. Lily clutched my arm. Rose shook her head violently. No, she whispered. No, 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 no. I knelt, holding them both. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was heartbreak in its purest form. Their small fingers gripping my shirt so tightly they were shaking. Lily's voice broke. Don't go.
Rose sobbed.
We need you.
Please.
Please. I held them, tears burning my eyes. My voice came out like breath, not sound. I'm not leaving you. Margaret stepped forward. You don't get to decide that. I stood, slowly, gently placing the twins behind me, and I looked right into her eyes.
Come.
Steady, unshaken.
No.
They do. The twins stepped forward, and for the first time since their mother died, they spoke with fire. Lily looked right at her grandmother and said, We choose Elena. Not angry, not pleading, just truth. Rose, voice trembling but certain, echoed, We choose Elena. The room didn't gasp, but it shifted, because love had just declared itself. Not politely, not quietly, fiercely. Margaret's expression cracked, only for a breath, shock breaking through the marble. And Benjamin. He closed his eyes, exhaling something he had held for months. He said, voice rough, She stays. Margaret stared at him, cold, disbelieving. But Benjamin didn't look away. I lost my wife, he said. I will not lose my daughters. She stays. And in that moment I understood something. The twins weren't the only ones I had reached. A door had opened in him too. Slowly, but undeniably. Margaret left the house that night. Quietly, but not defeated.
No.
People like her don't leave battles. They retreat to plan. And I knew she would return. With strategy. With precision. With intent. Love had won this round. But power had not surrendered. And the true test of love was still ahead. Margaret didn't return the next day. Or the next. The house seemed to exhale when she left, like a pressure had lifted. But peace after a storm is never quiet for long. When powerful people retreat, they don't surrender. They reorganize. I knew that.
But I didn't say anything.
Because the twins had begun to laugh again. Real laughter. Messy, bubbling, unself-conscious laughter. The kind that children are born knowing how to make, but grief tries to take. We spent mornings in the sunroom drawing. Afternoons in the garden chasing butterflies. Evenings reading books curled together on the couch. And slowly, like dawn creeping up the sky, their father joined us. Not every day. Not gracefully. Not easily. But consistently. Small things at first. He would come home earlier. Stand in the doorway and watch. Not speak. Just watch. Then he would sit in the armchair nearby. Then he would move closer. Until one evening, when the girls were playing with building blocks on the floor, Lily looked up at him and patted the space beside her.
Daddy, sit.
His breath caught. He sat. Not like a businessman lowering himself into a chair, but like a man returning to the earth where his heart lived. From then on, it was us together. Not a maid caring for children. Not a broken father hovering at the edges of their world. But a family. A quiet one. An imperfect one. A healing one. But grief is not a straight line. It circles. It returns. It waits for nights like the one when everything finally broke. It was past midnight. The storm from a few weeks before had returned, fierce this time. Thunder rattling windows. Wind pressing against the glass like a desperate something trying to get in. I woke to the sound of footsteps. Small. Rushing. Panicked. The door burst open. It was Rose. Her face was pale, hair tangled, eyes wet and wide. She was shaking. Elena, she whispered, voice cracking. It's Lily. She won't wake up. My heart lurched. I was on my feet before the thought had formed. We ran. Down the hallway. Into their room. Lily was sitting upright in her bed, but her eyes were unfocused, staring into the dark. She was breathing fast, too fast, like someone drowning on land. Her hands were clamped over her ears. She was whispering something over and over. I can hear it. I can hear it. I can hear it. I gathered her into my arms, rocking gently. Lily, sweetheart, breathe. You're safe. I'm here. I'm here. But she kept shaking. I can hear the car, she whispered. My heart stopped. Not slowed.
Stopped.
Rose climbed into my lap, pressing her tiny body into both of us.
We were there, she said.
Voice trembling.
Small.
Heavy with memory a child should never carry. I didn't want to say. I didn't want Daddy to be sad. The storm outside roared. Inside, everything went still. I whispered, "You can tell me." And Lily broke. The way something breaks when it has been holding too much for too long. We saw Mommy in the car, she cried. We were in the back. And Mommy was singing and Daddy was laughing and then. Her voice dissolved into sobs. Rose buried her face in my shoulder. We heard the crash, she whispered. It was loud. And Mommy didn't move. My arms tightened around them both, as if I could shield them from their own memories. They hadn't told anyone. Not their grandmother. Not their father. Not the teachers. Not the doctors. They had carried trauma too big for such small bodies. Alone. I held them as they cried, the kind of crying that comes from the center of the soul. The kind that rearranges something inside you. And then, a sound behind us. Footsteps. Benjamin stood in the doorway. Not dressed. Not composed. Just a man. A father. Broken. He had heard everything. He crossed the room slowly, like he was afraid he might shatter if he moved too fast. He sank to the floor in front of us. No suit. No mask. No distance. Just grief.
Raw.
Open. Human. He reached for them. Gentle, careful, like he was asking permission. They reached back. 2 small hands. 1 large hand. And in that moment, they forgave him without needing to speak. He pulled them into his arms. Held them as if holding the moment that destroyed them all. His voice was unrecognizable. I am so sorry. He said it again. And again. And again. Like he was trying to say it to the night that took everything. And I sat there beside them. 1 hand around Lily. 1 hand around Rose. 1 hand on Benjamin's back. A circle. A family not formed by blood, but by survival. We stayed like that for a long time. Long after the storm quieted. Long after breathing steadied. Long after tears dried against skin. And when the twins finally fell asleep against their father's chest, he looked up at me. His eyes were red. His voice was quiet, but steady. You saved them, he whispered. I shook my head.
They saved themselves.
I just stayed long enough to see it. He nodded, but his expression changed then.
Softer.
More open. Then his voice low, honest.
No.
You saved us. All of us. And, in that moment, I knew the grandmother had been right about one thing. I had changed the house. Not by force. Not by authority. Not by power. But by love. And love, once rooted, does not go quietly. But Margaret was not finished. And when she returned, she wouldn't come with lawyers. She would come with something worse.
Secrets. Guilt.
And the weapon of the past. She wasn't trying to remove me anymore. She was trying to break the place where love had started to grow. And her next move would change everything. Margaret did not come back immediately. She waited. She watched. She gathered information. People like her do not act emotionally, they act strategically. And when she returned, she didn't arrive with accusations. She arrived with a truth sharpened into a weapon. It was a quiet morning. The kind where the sunlight filtered soft through the curtains, where Lily and Rose were still sleeping in their shared bed, fingers curled into each other's pajama sleeves. I was making tea in the kitchen, chamomile, something gentle, something warm. The front door opened. No announcement. No warning. I knew it was her by the scent of her perfume, cold flowers and colder pride. She stepped into the kitchen like she had never left. Her posture, was immaculate. Her chin lifted, her gaze steady. But there was something new in her expression. Something determined, resolved. No more persuasion. No more polite sabotage. This was the final confrontation.
Sit, she said.
Not a suggestion. I didn't sit. Instead, I placed 2 cups of tea on the table. One for me. One for her. A gesture that said, "You may be power, but I am not afraid." She looked at the cup, then at me. She didn't sit either. Because the battle was not about tea. It was about place. It was about belonging. It was about who the home belonged to now. She folded her gloved hands in front of her. "Do you think you love them more than I do?" she asked. Her voice was smooth, controlled, quiet. I answered gently.
No.
"I think you love them differently. But they don't need discipline right now. They need safety." Her jaw tightened. For the first time, there was a crack in her mask. Then she said it. The truth she had carried like a blade. The night of the accident, Benjamin wasn't driving. The room stilled. My breath caught. My heartbeat stopped. Not because I didn't understand. Because I understood immediately. She continued. His wife was. She had been drinking. He tried to stop her. She insisted. The crash happened because she lost control. My hands tightened around the teacup. She wasn't finished. The press believed it was Benjamin driving. And I allowed that. Because I am not interested in shame. I am interested in preserving what remains. Her eyes bore into mine. This family has already survived one scandal. I will not allow another. I whispered. So, you want them to grow up believing their father killed their mother? She didn't blink. They already believe it. Silence. You think the truth will heal them? She asked. It will only break them further. I shook my head slowly.
No.
What breaks them is pretending the pain isn't real. She stepped closer. Her voice sharpened. You think love is enough to hold this family together? Her words came like a blow. Love is weak without structure. Love is unstable without authority. Love is useless without discipline. And now my voice changed.
Soft.
But made of iron.
No.
Love is the foundation. Without love, there is nothing worth protecting. Her expression flickered, a memory passing behind her eyes. For a moment, she looked less like granite, more like someone who once loved deeply and lost deeply. Then the stone returned. You don't belong here, she said. Not cruel. Just certain. You are temporary. You are a maid. You are a comfort blanket. They will grow. They will forget you. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't challenge. I simply said the truth. They already chose me. Because I had not claimed them.
They had claimed me.
The kitchen doorway filled.
Small feet.
Small hands rubbing sleepy eyes. 2 little girls who had heard the entire conversation. Lily looked at her grandmother. Rose looked at me. And together, without hesitation, they walked to me and took my hands. Not hiding. Not timid.
Certain.
Lily spoke first. Her voice was quiet, but it carried through the room like a bell. Elena is our family. Rose squeezed my hand tighter. And we won't lose our family again. Margaret stared at them. And for the first time since the moment I met her, she did not know what to say. Because power means nothing when love stands without fear. Benjamin entered then. He looked exhausted, but clear. The kind of clarity that comes only after grief has broken you open and rebuilt you differently. He moved to his daughters, rested his hands gently on their shoulders, then faced his mother. Mother, he said. She stays. No wavering. No hesitation. No room for negotiation. Margaret's breath shuddered. Not from defeat. From realization. She wasn't being pushed out of the family. She simply no longer controlled it. She looked at the twins. Then at her son. Then at me. And the smallest nod, barely a movement, passed between us. Not acceptance. Not approval. But acknowledgement. I was no longer temporary. And she left. This time quietly. This time knowing the war was over. And love had won. Life didn't magically become perfect after that. Trauma doesn't vanish. Grief doesn't evaporate. Broken hearts don't seal overnight. But joy returns slowly. Morning pancakes. Late-night blanket forts. Family dinners with laughter. Small hands braiding my hair now. The house that once echoed with loss.
Filled with life.
And one evening, months later, as the sun was setting, Lily and Rose curled beside me on the couch. Lily whispered, "Elena?" "Yes, sweetheart. Do you think love can bring people back?" I kissed their heads gently. "No," I said. "Love doesn't bring back the past." Rose asked quietly, "Then what does love do?" And I held them both close. Love makes sure what was lost was not lost for nothing. Love builds something new, something strong, something that lasts. They nodded softly. They understood, because they were the proof. Love did not return their mother. Love did not erase the accident. Love did not fix grief. But love transformed it into connection, into courage, into family. I did not replace their mother. I simply became another woman who would love them for the rest of their lives.
And they?
They became the greatest gift mine ever gave me, not by blood, but by heart. A chosen family, a real one built not on power, but on love. If love has ever found you in an unexpected place, if you've ever built family outside of blood, if you've ever chosen healing, even when grief tried to undo you, then you already understand the story. Thank you for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe for more stories of truth, healing, and the power of love. Your heart is safe here.